Hello, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Today I'm going to talk about another sci-fi movie from the 1970s. Now we're up to 1975. That would be The Stepford Wives, the science fiction social satire. I have a copy of the book here, which was published in 1972. This was the novel by Ira Levin, author of Rosemary's Baby. The paperback copy here has a kind of a cool 70s cover. And the novel and the movie do share a lot in common with Rosemary's Baby in terms of their themes of gender. And the movie, if I remember, it's been a while since I've read the book, but the movie and the book follow each other quite closely. So, a little bit about what this movie is about. So it was directed by Brian Forbes, a British director, and it starred Katherine Ross as her character's name, Joanna, and Paula Prentice as Bobby, who are two women who live in this suburban neighborhood. Who they've just moved from the city, and they begin to notice strange things are happening in this idyllic neighborhood. So the whole idea of moving to the city or moving out of the city and into the suburbs is such a big theme in this movie, where it's almost as if, like, out in the suburbs, like, they're mostly white, almost overwhelmingly white, and where these almost closed communities are able to almost kind of like reinforce some very old cultural attitudes. And so this movie is a very grim look at suburbia. The cliche idea where everything looks great and fantastic on the surface, but beneath it there's some a lot of darkness there. Just as in Rosemary's Baby, where the New York apartment building is turned into this house where all this really secretive sinister stuff is going on, but here it's kind of into a big neighborhood. So we're with Katherine Ross, and she and her husband's a lawyer, and they've decided to move, and they have two kids. And Joanna's also a photographer, and she wants to pursue her photography. And she kind of notices at first that a lot of the women in this community don't seem to have much of a personality to them. She also becomes aware of this social thing called the men's club, where men get together like every week, once a week or something, and meet, and they don't really talk to their wives about it. So it's all kind of secretive. And sure enough, Joanna's husband, Walter, quickly gets roped into joining the men's club, and even at one point Joanna becomes curious about what goes on at these men's club, and they even invite her to one of the meetings, and they kind of throw up a smoke screen where it's just all these men talking nonsense stuff about business and business strategy and whatever. So and the leader of this group is known as Diz, who's played by Patrick O'Neill, who he's called Diz because he apparently used to work for Disney and developed a lot of the technologies for the Disney amusement parks. And I have more to say about this later. But she comes to be friends with Bobby, played by Paula Prentice, who Paula Prentice is really good in this movie. She's just a really outgoing, friendly person, and they become good friends. And Bobby also is aware of some of the odd things, the odd way people are acting in this community, and things like that. So they bond over this, and they quickly start to notice things start to get stranger and stranger, where some of the women they've known, Bobby's known, have seemed to change. They seem to act different now, not acting themselves. Kind of like the old body snatcher idea, where someone is no longer themselves. And and eventually they get very paranoid and start to suspect there is some kind of conspiracy going on that they don't know about. They think, is there something in the water here, and they pursue that, or what happened here. Then they meet an older lady who used to live in that suburban neighborhood, and she says, oh yeah, it used to be a really, outgoing place, and the women there were very open-minded. By that I mean they were open to feminist ideas and invited feminists to come talk, and the women actually had their own social club that was very progressive and civically minded and all that, but all that stopped many years ago, and we don't know what happened. So you get the sense that the men did something, okay, and especially with Joanna's marriage, where when we first meet Walter, he seems like a nice enough guy, but he seems like he is one of those nice guys who's not really a nice guy, who kind of acts like he's a nice guy. And as she begins to pursue her photography more, he gets more and more defensive, and even physically confrontational with her, that she needs to, the kids need to be her first priority, and all this photography stuff is a distraction, and even goes as far to tell her that, I think you need to go see a psychiatrist, because it's not, a mother should be focused on her kids first, and I don't know why you're interested in doing other things. So he makes his really big turn into a really controlling husband, and things like that. And of course you can see where the story's going, where the men are, just not to spoil it, to kind of spoil it, the men are basically able to build robots to replace their wives, I assume. We saw this in Westworld a little bit a few years before this film, but the whole idea of, having a wife who is agreeable, who will never ever defy you, and this very, I don't even call it traditional, this very antiquated way of marriage, of all these men are so threatened by feminism, and so threatened by all these social changes happening in America, where they're resorting to murder and technology to fix all this. And I find it ironic that the ringleader worked for Disney, and the whole idea of going to like Disneyland, Disney World, wherever, and wanting to bring that to the suburban communities in this case in the most sinister way possible, where using technology not to advance into the future, but to kind of use technology to try to turn things back to the way they were before, at least in their minds. So it's a very damning look at traditional masculinity. So, I mean, now we're 50 years out from this film, and I think if you pay any attention to the culture at all today, I mean, these issues are far, far not, there's been progress, of course, but it seems like we're looking forward, the whole like traditional marriage, and the whole like kind of making aesthetics of the virtues of traditional marriage, which is what the Stepford Wives movie is satirizing, that idea. But I suppose if you showed this film to someone who was like a manosphere type person or something, or these ideas, and they would probably cheer this movie on. They would probably find what the men are doing in this movie, aspirational. But of course, the movie's a satire, and it's as I said, a very damning satire of kind of politically where America was going, where we're seeing so much positive push for social change in the 60s and in the 70s, but then we start to see the pushback happening as well. And like I said, we're still in the middle of this. None of it really feels like it's resolved yet. In fact, it may have, things may be getting worse in some ways. So I find this movie really relevant. I think the direction is really well. I think the film is well paced, where it's really a nice slow burn type of movie, the way it's designed, where we get to spend time with the characters, in particular on Bobby and Joanne, and get to know them. And there's humor in here, and just it's more character focused than a lot of movies of its type would be. So yeah, and also just a satire of suburbia, which I know is every post-war writer, like your Updike or John Cheever, they wrote so much about suburban life and suburbia. So this movie is a nice kind of sardonic take on suburbia, which I think works well. So yeah. So I find this movie really effective. I think it was really well done, just from the writing, the direction, the way it films the suburban neighborhood, where everything does look kind of perfect on the surface, with the supermarkets and the stores and the parks and the backyards and the elaborate living rooms and all that. It lures you in. It looks very comfortable, but like I said, I love it when you have a idyllic setting and there's something sinister happening in the background. So I think the social commentary in this movie is quite dead on, as I would say. So this movie is on Tubi right now, so you can go watch it for free at this moment. So it's available for free to watch, and I'd highly recommend. So thanks for watching, and I will talk to you later. Bye.